Hey entrepreneurs, let's talk about constraints and how to use artificial constraints to lower your stress and increase the speed at which you just tear through the to-do list, the stuff you've got to get done that stresses you out at the end of the day when you didn't get to it because of all the other things that you were curious about. We're going to talk about how to overcome that problem with artificial constraints. So first, the problem. Entrepreneurs often get pulled into this work because you're curious people. You research things, you get curious about learning about something you heard somebody else does, and that's what pulled you into an area of knowledge that allowed you to learn how to launch businesses, come up with business ideas, and pivot to a better business idea when you found one. But here's the problem with that underlying tendency for curiosity wastes a lot of time for the guys I work with. And I'm talking about some very successful people and some people who are just getting going. There's this tendency for us to think it'll just take a minute. I'm just curious, what was that person talking about, that new AI tool or that new business concept? And so you think, I'll just take 5 minutes and just really quickly just learn what that is. Next thing you know, you've spent 2.5 hours and you've signed up for a mastermind and you've done all of these different things that you didn't intend to because your curiosity instinct is so strong. And so what we want to do is we want to combat stress by not spending your whole day on things where when you get to the end of the day, you can't quite put your finger on what you spent all your time on. You know you worked hard, you know that you weren't slacking off, but even at the end of the week, sometimes you think back, well, what did I work hard on? And you can't point to much progress. So some of the strategies that I work with entrepreneurs to install, some of the habits that we install, one is just to have a very clear list of maintenance tasks. This is the have to list. The stuff we have to get done just to keep the lights on, just to keep the current cash flow you've already built up going, and then separate that from a progress task list. And we want one progress task list, not scattered here in this app and a little bit on this paper and a little bit over there for that team. For you personally, we want one progress task. Like these are the things that we haven't built yet, the new team efficiencies we want to design, the new product we want to roll out. The key is it has to be a single list so that you can prioritize, drag one thing to the top. Now, it is possible that you're going to work on multiple progress tasks at once because you have a team, or maybe because you have partnerships in several different businesses. Even then, though, we still want a hierarchy where you say, this is the one that has the highest payoff potential in the shortest period of time if I can just push it across the finish line. So even if there's 3 or 4 things that you're concurrently working on, you still want to have the number one ranked at the top. So you could think of it like if you're the best batter that a baseball team has, and there's this varsity game going on here, but there's a JV game going on over here. Whenever there's a chance for you to step up to the plate at the varsity game, you should take that first. And if there's a competing, they're also calling you to the JV game, you're going to say no to that, right? That's why we have that hierarchy list. So you might drop down, you delegate something and you're waiting for them to get back to you. While you're waiting, you can work on item 2 or item 3. But as soon as something opens up to work at that top level, that's the varsity game. That's where you want to put your attention. So we have this maintenance task list. We have a progress task list. What comes first? Well, if you follow through on like concepts from The One Thing, that book that was very popular and talks about, starting your day with just put in an hour or 2 on the one needle moving long-term goal, that's fine. You can do it that way, or you can start with your maintenance task list. But here's the thing. Most people who start with their maintenance task list wander. Part of their maintenance task list is to check messages. And there's this message, this person's asking for this, and they go to research it and they realize there's a problem. Next thing you know, hours have passed. What we want to do is have a have to list. That's what your maintenance task list is. And we want to create artificial constraints where you say, I'm going to compress that list into 2 hours on Tuesdays and 2 hours on Thursdays so that you don't have task switching. You're not throughout the week jumping from your progress task, a deep focus to, I'll just do that. I'll just respond to that message real quick. We want to reduce that so that your personal output will be higher, partly just because we reduce the cognitive load of having to be in multiple places at once mentally. Even if you think you're focusing on one thing, if you're every few minutes checking Slack or checking whatever messaging methods you use, it reduces your cognitive capacity to really pour into the one thing. So what we want to do is we want to preserve the time that you have to focus on progress tasks by first compressing all of those maintenance tasks, the have to list. We want to get it off your plate so that you've released that you have no cognitive load of, oh, there's stuff I have to still get to later. And because that's the stuff you actually have to do so that you can live to fight another day. So if this progress task or this idea, this thing you got curious about doesn't pan out, you still get another chance because you still have cash coming in, right? So we don't want to violate DROOM. This is the acronym that stands for don't run out of money, right? Don't violate that number one business rule, DROOM. So how do you do artificial constraints? What it means is you make that list, your have to list, and maybe it's once. Some things are like daily, some things are weekly, some things are monthly, but you consolidate those into, well, today my have to list is, here's the maintenance task. This is the stuff that I have to get done. And you want to have that in a sequence that you're actually going to finish the first thing before you start the next thing. There's this very simple, kind of stupid sounding productivity strategy where you write down all the stuff you want to do today, and then you pick one thing off that list, you flip it over, you write it on the back of that paper. And then you put that on your desk and you only work on that one thing until it's completely finished. You cross it off, or until you've done the part you had to delegate the rest or whatever, but you cross that off. Then you flip the page over and you find the next one thing from your list. And it's just a psychological trick, right, that we play on ourselves to prevent our mind from having this sense of being pulled into 100 directions at once. That is the enemy of productivity. We want one clear goal. Really, productivity is about saying no. It's what you don't do that allows you to focus on the fewest things that have the highest leverage, biggest impact, moving you towards the goals that you have. And of course, yes, there's always that question of what time horizon are we talking about? Short-term time horizon, you're going to say there's different things that are priority compared if you look at a longer time horizon. And so that's going to be different for each entrepreneur and for each different situation. So you have to figure out the cash flow that I have, how long of a time horizon, how much room has it purchased for me to be able to play the long game, because that's the other productivity secret, is doing things now that pay you back dividends of time savings tomorrow. If we can reduce it down to two things, productivity comes down to decisions that allow you to do either subtraction or leverage. Subtract all the stuff that's in your way that's like kind of useful but not great, and increase leverage. Leverage, as defined, as what are the things I can do where it allows me to spend 1 hour to accomplish 10 hours of work. If you only do those two things, I'm always just subtracting things off my plate or doing high leverage things, then no one can compete with you in the long run. The problem is the time horizon, right? If there's certain things you just have to get done to keep the cash flow going, even if it's not the best in the long term, it's not the highest payoff activity, but you have to get it done soon just to keep your business afloat. That's the time horizon question, and it's different for each person, and we want to figure out what that is. But all of that becomes much easier if you increase the time you have to think and plan. How do you increase the time you have to think and plan? You don't spend it like scattered, jumping back and forth between various different project tasks and moving back and forth with the maintenance tasks, and then feeling stressed at the end of the day and not having any time to think and plan. That's why I'm saying use artificial constraints, where you say, here's my maintenance list. I'm going to give myself 2 hours to finish it. The first one, I'm giving myself 20 minutes. And of course, you're going to adjust that time to fit what you think is a realistic amount of time for you to finish that task. And you're going to try to just do realistic first. Once you've established, okay, this routine of these things that I do on a recurring basis, it should take around 2 hours, let's say, then what you do is you try to compress that. You say, tomorrow I'm going to see if I can do it in 1 hour and 50 minutes. And then the next day, maybe 1 hour and 45 minutes. And you try to compress the time. Why? Because if you control stress, it doesn't have the negative impact on your physiology and your psychology, which are interlinked all the time, right? You can't have a negative thought without having a negative impact on your neurochemistry, moving you more towards a low mood. You can't have a boost in energy and positive physiological effects without it impacting the thoughts that naturally arise in your mind. So those two things are always linked. And so we want to be thinking, how can we engineer our environment? In this case, part of your environment is having structure that you've created for yourself, such that your environment supports positive psychological states that allow you to become more productive. And one of the best ways to do that is to get rid of uncontrolled stress. Things that stress us out are things that we care about and we can't really control. And so if we can give you back the control element, then your stress goes down fast. So in this case, we're saying you don't actually have to finish that maintenance task in 2 hours. but you're going to pretend like you're going to pretend like you have to. Why? Because then you've got the speed from being in a race to try to get to the bottom of it and not get distracted, because it's more engaging, releases dopamine when you know, like, okay, the faster I can get through this, I can win, right? The idea of winning starts to release dopamine, which engages your energy. So you're excited to go after that. But it's an artificial constraint. You don't actually have to finish it. If you had to finish it, or else you're going to lose your business, stress starts to pour out into your physiology. You start to experience the negative impact of cortisol surging through your body, right? And so what we want to do is you want to try to force yourself to do things way before you have to. Then you're working fast and your stress is low, because you know, like, you're still in control. In fact, it gives you back a greater sense of control, because now you've created more space in your environment, in your work environment. You have more time on your calendar. Seeing that white space that you've created by compressing things and not just kind of wandering through your day will actually lower your stress, which increases your ability to show up with the kind of energy that I want you to show up with, so that you can pursue the best possible version of yourself in your entrepreneurial journey. So your challenge this week is just to ask yourself, have I created a have-to list? Do I have it separated from my progress tasks? And how can I use artificial constraints in some way? Just start practicing with it. It doesn't have to be the whole strategy I just laid out for you today. It can be any small way. It could just be one thing, like, well, one thing I'll do is I will force myself to try to, in 20 minutes, prioritize my task list for the day before I start. And I won't let myself kind of wander and then come back to it in it's a 45-minute process where I pause and I go get some coffee and then I come back and do a little bit more. If you treat it like a race, create that artificial constraint. It can be anything like that. You choose what it should be, take the challenge, experience the positive benefit, and you'll start to want to do more of it and build this into your work routine on a regular basis. Talk to you again soon.